Let's just say that this movie has some of the best and worst aspects of the John Wick franchise thus far. John Wick Chapter 4 once again stars Keanu Reeves, Ian McShane, and Lawrence Fishburne. And in this movie, John Wick uncovers a path to defeating the High Table, but before he can earn his freedom, Wick must face off against a new enemy with powerful alliances across the globe and forces that turn old friends into foes. Let's just start off by saying that I'm not the biggest fan of the John Wick franchise. In fact, up until this week, I hadn't seen any of the movies, so I finally watched them, and I don't think they're the greatest things in the world. They have some of the greatest action sequences, though, I will say that. I think in the writing department, these movies are lackluster, and that's why I haven't been the biggest fans of them. But I was hoping that John Wick Chapter 4 would do something new for me, make me finally love one of these movies. I can't say I loved this one. There are aspects that I really did enjoy about it, and I overall think it's a good movie. Still not the greatest though, and I'll get more into my in-depth thoughts in a second, but before we do, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and comment down below what are your thoughts or expectations for John Wick Chapter 4. But let's keep talking about the movie. I do just want to start off by applauding Chad Stahelski, the director of this movie, for dealing with the action sequences so masterfully, directing them in the best way possible. And that of course also goes into the cinematography and the editing in the editing room, how they cut it all together. I think him at the helm of the action sequences in particular, they are great. He comes from his stunt background, of course, and that's why I think these movies work so well. It's because he knows how to direct action sequences. There's one continuous shot in this movie that lasts around like 2 to 3 minutes that is probably one of my favorite sequences of the entire year thus far, and we're only 3 months in. Not only is it eye candy and so fun to just watch, but it is so well crafted. From what I could tell, it seemed like they used a drone to capture a continuous, almost one-shot sequence of Keanu Reeves just kicking ass. It's towards the third act of the movie, and it is just perfection. Also, another one of my favorite parts about this movie was the addition of Donnie Yen, who was great. He's a great martial artist, also just a great overall actor, and I also did like Bill Skarsgård as the villain, probably the best villain of the franchise thus far. He doesn't get much to do in terms of like being an intimidating foe in front of John Wick particularly, but when it comes to everyone else, he demands the screen and he creates a menacing threat towards everyone else, except he just doesn't really interact with John Wick that much. And when I say he's the best villain of the franchise, there wasn't really a high bar to begin with. The movie started off pretty slow, and I think the first and half of the second act, later in the second act, the movie starts to pick up steam, luckily. But I would say the first half of this movie is pretty slow. Not gonna lie, I did find myself dozing off at times. They didn't sprinkle the action sequences enough equally throughout the movie. Like, there were so many in the third act, which just makes the third act so much fun. I think they could have done a better job at spreading out the action sequences though, because there's maybe 1 or 2 in the first and second act, so there's a lot of just moments that feel fairly slow. To me at least, I think there's pacing issues throughout. When it comes to this movie, I still feel like it is lackluster in writing characters that you care for. I mean, specifically John Wick. I don't really have that much investment in this character. We're 4 movies in now, and they always touch on some stuff like his history with his wife. They never really fully go into that though, and I do wish they would have. I mean, by now you would have thought that they would have, but they haven't. And speaking of John Wick, I don't think Keanu Reeves, as much as I think a lot of us aren't willing to see it, he isn't the greatest dramatic actor. Don't get me wrong, I love me some Keanu Reeves. I'm not crapping on him particularly. I think he could work up his acting skills though, especially in terms of delivering a performance that is going to bring out the emotions from the audience, I feel. If there are a lot of key moments in this movie that you really need John Wick and Keanu Reeves specifically to really pull out the emotions, they don't really come out though. The movie's also nearly 3 hours long. It's unnecessarily long. I think if you cut up more of the stuff in the first and second act, it would have had better pacing throughout, especially with the third act just being so jam-packed with so many thrilling sequences. But here's where my real problems with John Wick Chapter 4 start to kick in, because I do want to get into something that is a big spoiler. So if you haven't seen the movie, I would highly suggest fast forwarding to this time. But one of my issues with the movie has to do with the spoilers, so I'm going to discuss that starting now. Throughout this movie, John Wick has insane plot armor. If you don't know what that is, basically, because of how the movie plays out in the story, John Wick can't die. There's armor saving him and his character in the writing from dying. So he will take beating after beating, gunshot after gunshot, wound after wound, and he will still walk away seeming pretty fine. And we're now at the point where he's just superhuman, and luckily at the end of the movie, here's where the spoiler comes in, he dies. So I can be a bit forgiving in that aspect. They had some balls and they decided to give a little punch to the audience, though I don't think it fully paid off emotionally. But the fact that they killed him, they have balls for that, and I respect that. Do I have a feeling they're going to bring him back? Possibly. But what makes it so frustrating and hard to get invested, especially in the overall movie, is because the fact that he can't die, it takes away from the tension. Because as I'm watching most of these action sequences, I don't really feel much. I'm watching them and they are great to look at, but really I don't feel that on edge, nervous, or anything because of the fact that I know that John Wick's just gonna survive in the end. And that just happened time after time after time, and it got to the point where I was shaking my head a little bit, especially when one scene he just falls off of a roof, and I know he's done that before. It was at that point in the movie where I was like, come on, you need to do more. There needs to be some balls here. And they do have some balls in the end, so I am a little forgiving, but it is still a big issue for me. It's just implausible. The implausibility factor of Wick's survival in this movie, it doesn't work. Overall, I did not hate John Wick Chapter 4. If anything, I think it may be the second best movie of the franchise. I think coming off of that third act, I am willing to forgive some of my issues in the first half of the movie, but you can't deny how phenomenal the action sequences are. Maybe one or two of them do go on for a little too long, though, I will say that. But regardless, Keanu Reeves, not the greatest actor, but when it comes to the stunts, he gives it his all. I thoroughly enjoyed Donnie Yen, and I would like to see possibly even a spin-off of his character more in this John Wick franchise. The movie is unnecessarily long, with pacing issues though, and some issues when it comes to how characters have plot armor. Frustrating aspects aside, I thought it was a good movie. I'm gonna give John Wick Chapter 4 a C+. I think it just borders that line of me giving it a positive review. I'm not quite there yet though, but who knows, maybe on rewatch I could think differently. But what are your guys' thoughts on John Wick Chapter 4? If you've seen the movie, let me know what you thought of it down below. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this review, and again, if you did enjoy it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, as well as that notification bell so you don't miss any further videos. And as always, look forward to more videos and reviews coming soon. My name is Ben, people call me Meter, and I'll see you guys in the next one.